Well, I want to start by thanking everybody for their time and joining us today. I know everyone's got busy schedules and a lot going on in the world. During panel 4, we will look at the significance of international support across the region and as standby supporter rather than enforced, assisting when and where needed without duplication. Obviously, military intervention is always the last resort, but our panelists will discuss the need to remain engaged, ready to assist effectively and in a coordinated manner on opportunities for coordination and strategy improvements. So let's get started. My name is Christian Wiley. I'm CEO and President of Advanced Catastrophe Technologies, and we are a nationwide restoration firm specializing in disaster restoration, water, fire, storms, biohazard, environmental factors, including the pandemic of COVID-19. Through working in the Caribbean, I've encountered several obstacles, both humanitarian, even logistically, whether it's working in the Virgin Islands or in the Bahamas, even most recently with Hurricane Dorian affecting the Bahamas a couple of years ago. I will now move on and introduce everyone on our panel. We will start with our distinguished guest. We have 5 members, and I'll allow each of you to quickly introduce yourselves. We'll get started with Vice-admiral Jean Hossaman, Commander of French Forces in the Caribbean of French Ministry of the Armed Forces. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling in from?
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian. And Vice-admiral Jean Hausermann. I'm commanding French forces in the Caribbean. My base and headquarters are in Martinique, on the Eastern Caribbean. And I'm in charge of all operations, including counter-drugs operations. And it's today's talking points about HADR, humanitarian and disaster relief operations as well.
Very good, thank you, sir. Next, we have Brigadier General Erik Rodriguez, Colombian Army Director, Exercises and Coalition Affairs, Directorate, J79, Directorate of United States Southern Command Headquarters.
Good afternoon, Christian. Good afternoon, all. It's my pleasure to share the panel with all of you. As you say, I am the Director of the U.S. Southern Command J79 Exercise and Coalition Affairs.
And where are you calling in from? Are you in Colombia?
No, right now I'm here in Miami at Southcom. I have been here for these 2 weeks already now in this unit. I was working in my country until the last month.
Very good. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Next up, we have Lieutenant Colonel Simon Westlake, Royal Marines, United Kingdom Defence, Attaché to the Caribbean of the UK Ministry of Defence, British High Commission, Kingston. I hope I said that correctly.
Christian, thank you, and good afternoon to you and my fellow panel members today. Yes, indeed, I'm based in Kingston as the UK's Defence Attaché to the Caribbean. I have a responsibility across 5 of the United Kingdom overseas territories in the region and another 14 of the independent nations. I importantly act as the link with our ships in the region, known as APT North. At any one time, we'll have 1 ship, and then during hurricane season, we also have 2 ships in the region that are here primarily to provide HADR response when required, focused on the OTs, but perhaps available to the rest of the Caribbean. And when they're not doing that, they're focused on counter illicit trafficking operations. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, sir. Next, we have Lieutenant Colonel Paul Simpson, J5, Latin America and Caribbean, Canadian Joint Operations Command.
Yeah, good afternoon, thank you. Yeah, just calling in from Ottawa today. I work in our J5 plan shops. Latin American and Caribbean is my regional responsibility, but I have responsibilities for Canadian Armed Forces HADR support to Global Affairs Canada worldwide. And I'm also a member of the Canadian Disaster Assessment Team. That's a small team that the government sends into the disaster area, country's ability to respond, and then we advise government on best way to respond to that crisis. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Jorge Zequeira. I hope I said that correctly. Was that good?
That's correct.
Excellent. Listen, I'm a Texan, so we try to have our Spanish names appropriate. So I'm glad I got that correct. Regional Civil Military and Security Coordinator and Acting Head of Office of Program Coordination and Cooperation in Colombia of IFRC International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, I'm speaking to all of you. Greetings to all the panel members from Panama, sunny and hot Panama. I am the Regional Civil Military Coordinator for the Federation, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, as well as other hats, like I'm in charge of the office in Colombia, as well as the security across the region. So happy to be here, and thank you very much. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. And again, as we have talking points, we'll go round for round and get to as many as we can. Obviously, some of these are going to dive fairly deep in conversation, and obviously there's going to be some group think and involvement in some of these responses. I just want to make sure that we get to as many as we can, and some of these talking points overlap in several ways, so we'll do everything we can to get to them. Let's start with Vice-Admiral Jean Hossaman. What is the role of French Armed Forces in the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations in the Caribbean?
Well, this role is mainly, of course, HADR operations, and I see the role as mostly an help in urgent needs. The military, in my opinion, is the people that act under very special, very unusual circumstances, and it's always in emergencies. That is to say that I believe that we don't have to continue HADR operations when the reconstructions processes are being begin to be in place. So it's the first. The other topic in my mind, the other way French forces and probably all military forces can help is usually to go with logistic efforts. And we had this example during the previous hurricane season and the pandemic. The French armed forces contribute to carry to 12 states in the Caribbean, such as Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, and much more, in order to carry PPEs and to carry equipment in order to prepare the next hurricane season in 2020 in a COVID-19 context and environment. So it's about 100 tons of equipment that we did carry to the people. One of the points was that it was in close coordination with, on one part, NGOs such as the Red Cross, and on the other part with regional organizations such as the CARICOM with CDMA or Impacts, and also organizations such as the World Food Program. So as a matter of fact, pandemic was a rehearsal for HADR operations. We had to put on the field all the know-how, all the procedures that we have with those people, with those stakeholders. So it was an important way to improve all processes in that particular field. Of course, that there was some difficulties to have some exercises, field exercises, but it was done through tabletop exercise that we follow. For example, the one organized by CDMA called the Synergy. It was a very good opportunity to to network and also to assess and to share assessments and organizations between before the hurricane season. I don't know if that answers your question. I can go into small details for the presentation of the armed forces. It's about 1,200 military and civilian personnel based on the French territories here in the Caribbean, in Martinique and Guadeloupe, and coming from all the three services, that is to say, Navy, Army, and Air Force. So with naval units, air units, and also infantry regular units.
No, I think that was an excellent explanation to that talking point, Vice-admiral. I appreciate your time and the explanation. And obviously, y'all are doing incredible things down there. And through the pandemic, I think we'll all agree we learned how to become more agile and really adapt and overcome to some of the circumstances. So it's made us better, not just obviously operationally in the field, but even for us in business, we've had to learn to do more with less, and even in the way we communicate. So it certainly has made us better, and we appreciate the explanation there. As we move on, I'd like to go to Brigadier General Erik Rodriguez. What is the initial role of the U.S. Southern Command when disaster occurs in the region? I don't know if that's changed at all since from you being in Colombia or now based in Miami, but how would you like to address that, sir?
Okay. The combatant commander, the U.S. Southcom commander, have the authority to deploy assigned forces that are already in the region. That is the case of the JTF Bravo medical elements, civil affairs, and the aviation battalion located at Sotocano in Honduras, in order to provide time-sensitive life-saving support during that critical 72-hour period following a disaster. It's a specifically 72-hour period. However, the commander had to obtain the U.S. ambassador and the partner nation chief of defense concurrence before deploying any assets. Any country that has been affected has to concur to deploy these assets. During that 72 hours, or this 72-hour authority allows the Department of Defense through Southcom to engage quickly while formal requests work their way from the partner nation through the Department of the State and then back to the Department of Defense. After 72 hours, the Southcom must be given approval by the Secretary or the Deputy Secretary of Defense to continue operations. Normally, this approval is given with budget and time constraints. So that means that while maybe sometimes the military response is not the preferred response, the preferred option, always the military have in the region unique and deployable capabilities to attend this initial gap of 72 hours before any larger humanitarian assistance or disaster relief get on the ground. That is mainly the role of U.S. Southcom initially in every crisis.
Excellent explanation. I think it helps clear a lot of question or confusion on what U.S. Southcom's role is, and I'm happy to hear about the 72-hour rule and how the deployment works. So that's excellent. Thank you, sir. How about Lieutenant Colonel Simon Westlake? Integration of military support into a civil response. what are some of the opportunities and some of the challenges, just the same?
Yeah, Christian, thank you. I think I'd like to just echo something that Admiral Jean highlighted, which is your military response is a supporting function. It's an enabling function. And as such, it is supporting and enabling civil authorities, civil response. And if I take it in the UK context, it's deploying in support of what would be an FCDO-led response, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office response. And so when we look at our military response, we have the challenge of geography as the UK. So that has led us to have forward deployed forces in a similar fashion to our French colleagues. But we invest our effort into the shipping of APT North, and so personnel and equipment and logistics that will be deployed with that shipping. Now, they are the first responders from a UK perspective, and it is about saving life. It's about understanding the context. It's about limiting damage, about restoring essential services, and then assisting in setting conditions for recovery. But that is the tip of the spear, so to speak. We will have a force of up to 1,000 personnel, and that will be a mixture of Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office personnel, military personnel, other civilian experts held at readiness in the UK, ready to deploy in to support the region. Now, that raises the issue of the integration of that deployment into whatever civil response is occurring. And for us, the role of SEDEMA, for example, is a really important factor in any regional response, and how we best integrate any deployed capability from the UK into that regional response. And of course, we recognize that the situation when it involves a UK overseas territory is perhaps different to when it involves an independent nation in the region. And so the two different contexts present some certain freedom of maneuver when it comes to an overseas territory, but additional challenges when it comes to integration of that response into a multinational, largely civilian-led, as it should be, response in the independent Caribbean. But I think there are definitely opportunities here, given we have forward deployed military capabilities in the region, whether they're UK, whether they're French, whether they come from Southcom, to enable us to think about the problems in advance, to train in relation to those problems in advance, and to be better prepared to deliver a synchronized response at a time when actually, if we have a significant disaster, confusion will be a large part of the problem set we're dealing with. So the better we are working together in out of contact, so to speak, will aid us in delivering that response. But I think what is important for us is having our partners in the region, having our civilian counterparts and the like, able to identify what their critical requirements are, what their capability gaps are, and what they best need in terms of our immediate response to support them in, as I say, saving life, limiting damage, and setting conditions for the recovery.
Thank you, sir. And I've got a follow-up question to some of those comments, because it's really interesting when you think about the forward thinking and forward deployed resources that you and other allies have in that region. What are some of the challenges that you faced and that you've actually pivoted and changed maybe the way you respond in the future? Some of the things you've experienced over the last couple of years during disasters or events, because you do mention the things that don't go right in those deployments and in those instances. What have you noticed and what has changed to maybe make for a better response for disasters in the future?
Well, I think I'd make two observations. One would be an internal reflection, and the other would be a comment on what I've seen develop in the region. I mean, firstly, internally, we've learned lessons from the UK response in the past. Dorian provided us some very clear lessons. And as a result, we have evolved the structures within our own government organisations in the UK. And so we now have a disaster management oversight committee that during core hurricane season will meet weekly, will be continually monitoring the weather patterns, and will step up its dialogue and its engagement as weather patterns develop in seriousness. So as we see a hurricane developing, and we experienced this through the 2020 season, we're having a closer dialogue, cross-government dialogue, about what that means for UK posture, what that means in terms of where we are positioning our ships that are in the region, and how we are better queuing up forces and elements at readiness in the UK. And indeed, it was that process that led to us last year forward deploying additional capabilities into the UK overseas territories and on board our ships, who were forward elements of the at readiness force held in the UK. And that was to mitigate risk associated with COVID. We recognized there might be complexity in quickly deploying forces into the region, so we forward deployed elements, so they were already here to better develop the understand function from a military perspective. And so my reflection there is that internally we've recognized weakness, have addressed that, and have a much more coherent approach to how we understand developing weather patterns, how we're positioned for that, and actually how we approach the decision making about the forces we have at readiness and where they are at any one time. When I look across the region, I mean, what I found during last year's season, I mean, thankfully, most of the Caribbean escaped with relatively low levels of damage. Obviously, Central America suffered somewhat more. But what I saw, for example, was SEDEMA reaching out very quickly to me as the regional DA to ask about our capabilities, to discuss where they're positioned, what we may be able to do. I saw a ready mechanism being applied within the MNCCC organization to bring us in as international partners to talk about readiness, to talk about activation steps, to talk about what that meant for us as partners. And so I think that appears to be a more coherent structure than may have been the case previously. I don't want to speak out of turn, but it just seems to me that both from a UK perspective and then regionally, we have developed greater awareness, a greater degree of dialogue as we think about the problem. And for me now, it's building that as an habitual process so that we are having discussion not just in crisis, but as a routine basis throughout the year, and perhaps are thinking about HADR not just during the core hurricane season, but throughout the 12 months. So it becomes a continual part of our engagement. And so that we are looking at our readiness, we're looking at how our forces and civilian counterparts are training, posturing, what we do together in a combined function. And I'll give you one example. We have ships in the region. They have embarked HADR response capabilities. We are always looking for opportunities to train those capabilities ashore. We had problems last year in being able to gain access to locations to conduct that training. Most of those complications were about COVID, and we fully understand the sensitivities over that. But I think any opportunity we have to deploy capability ashore, to roll that out in an exercise function, to do that with counterparts, to do that with civil organizations, will only aid us when it comes to having to do that for real. That would be a plea from me that any partner that would want to cooperate with us as we look to that program, we'd be welcoming those discussions.
Sure, absolutely, and I appreciate the deep dialogue, Lieutenant Colonel Westlake. I think having the ability to keep your guys constantly training and staying proactive, where you remain at the ready, not having a ramp up period of getting ready, but always being at the ready, is really next level. When you talk about like Brigadier General Rodriguez was saying, that first 72 hours being so crucial in our response and the things that we do to really start breaking that glass to get even civilian organizations engaged is incredibly important. Here on the mainland here in the States, ACT does that pretty regularly, almost with every event, not just for tropical disasters and events in the Caribbean, but we find ourselves regularly doing that here in the U.S. with a wide variety of disasters, whether it's deploying ahead of time for the wildfire seasons on the West Coast, constantly dealing in the wintertime with polar vortexes we're experiencing right now. We've got states that are 20 and 30 degrees below zero, and we've got mass devastation with broken pipes and people that are affected and really stuck in the cold. we've got the abilities to kind of try to stay ahead and deploy before these events happen and stay at the ready. Then you get to hurricane season or flood season, we have to do the same thing, deploying tractor trailers, crews, in between disasters, training these guys and making sure equipment is ready to go and all of these things stay at the ready. Generators, fuel, even food in emergency times. We've got parts of the country that maybe can't even get resources for basic food and water. So I think there's a lot of similarly there in that process and that mentality. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add before we move on to the next talking point?
Christian, actually, if I could just pick up on a point
Please.
you made there, and I think
Yeah.
it highlights an important point. The point has already been made about the 72-hour response. From a US perspective, we might approach it with a slightly longer time frame, but we are all approaching it on the basis that there is going to be a handoff at some point from a military heavy response towards a civilian heavy response, and that response being more about the recovery. And so the understanding that I think is necessary between whether that's an NGO response or some other governmental response, their understanding of what we are able to do, and perhaps the limitations on what we are able to do in those first 72 hours, perhaps, but the understanding that is necessary between the military entity and whatever that civil response recovery entity is going to look like, is important. And again, the dialogue that can take place ahead of crisis, is all important there, I think.
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly important to really drive home your organization's ability, military-wise, for resources and response, because sometimes, y'all, whether your hands are tied or whether you have the approval you need in the first 72 to deploy and actually put your deployed crews and resources to work, probably have been underutilized in disasters where before, if the communication was done ahead of time, they might have been able to utilize those resources and maybe had a faster recovery in their disasters. And obviously that's what we're working towards and looking to connect those dots and to connect those resources and truly help that region during a disaster event. Moving on to Lieutenant Colonel Paul Simpson. Integration of international support to the regional response mechanism under the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency. Want to kind of expand on that, Lieutenant Colonel Simpson?
Yeah, be happy to. Just a couple of preamble points, I guess. Canada is a bit unique in this this forum here. We don't have forward deployed forces, nor do we have overseas territories. So we have very strong ties with the Caribbean, business ties, obviously through the Commonwealth, large diasporas in Canada from the Caribbean. So it's a very meaningful spot for the country, but we don't have forces out there. So that puts us in a bit of a different situation. Just to pick up on what Simon said in terms of a maturation of the process where we look to deal with HADR events in a more fulsome manner. This is my 6th year in this job doing HADR in Latin America and the Caribbean, and I can certainly see exactly what Simon is talking about in terms of there's far better communication amongst organizations. There's far more anticipatory work that goes into preparing for hurricane seasons, wrapping up lessons learned afterwards and all that things, the MNCCC that Simon spoke about. There's just been a lot more of that. I think there's still some work we can do as kind of key partners in the region to synchronize those various activities, because when you're dealing with SEDEMA or even the individual countries, their emergency management folks are not plentiful and are usually pretty busy folks. So if we can sync up, I think we've got some work we can do there for sure. Yeah, like the UK pointed out, Canada very much sees SEDEMA as a forefront, in the forefront of regional response. I mean, they do have some great capabilities with the CDRUs, the RNATs, the COST folks. And then within, the sub-regional focal points, if you look at Barbados with the field hospital, there's other field hospitals coming online, the JDF DART, the TNT DART, they have a great capacity within the region to help themselves. So Canada very much is looking to find ways to enable those key elements that CEDIMA and CARICOM can deploy rapidly in response to their own requirements. If we can get in there and help them make that happen, then that's just a better way to operate, I think, in the region. And we've done that over the last couple of years with the JDF folks, gone in to give them some training to make their movement a little bit better. We had some folks down in Barbados for 2.5 months during the hurricane season, working with the Barbados Field Hospital, again, making that more flexible and more transportable. So these are these type of enabling activities we can do on an ongoing basis to help the region help itself. And in worst case scenario, if we've got to throw more at that problem, at least we're better situated in terms of integrating with them. Over.
Sure. Yeah. In that region, I would imagine staying engaged in between disasters really probably keeps all of the resources tied together to where, when they're needed, it's not so much of an uphill climb or even a learning obstacle to get through it. That ongoing communication and dialogue probably is worth its weight pretty heavily. And what I'm hearing from most of you now is it sounds like there needs to be more of that open dialogue and communication, and not waiting for a disaster to really have those kind of conversations between the military and the civilian sector. Is that right?
No, that's exactly it. And certainly I know on my government side, we finally got in our heads around a kind of a no regrets deployment strategy, whereby we'll put people and assets into places in response to things we see coming. If they don't impact in the way that we think they're going to impact, then our folks can come home and, no blood, no foul kind of thing. But we were there, we were ready if we were needed to be, because oftentimes waiting till after anytime waiting till after the event, if you can see it coming, you're too late to the need. Absolutely.
Yeah, we sometimes face the same thing with hurricanes or disasters that we kind of see on the horizon, and you either over prepared and over deployed, or you get there too late and what the heck were you doing? How come you weren't here and ready to go and all that stuff? So I think we resonate there quite a bit on always staying at the ready and would rather have the resources there and not need it than vice versa, and have that uphill battle with the civilian sectors looking and pointing fingers and wanting to know, I thought we planned for this kind of stuff. So that's really good. Moving on to Mr. Jorge Zequeira. What does the Federation and the movement of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Society do in the civil military arena for disasters?
Well, in essence, I'd like to start with just people who we have here. Every country that we have here represented, to include the United States, France with Iraq, Canada, the United Kingdom, they all have Red Crosses. We are the largest international organization of humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the world, and supporting the 35 countries to include the Caribbean in the Americas. And we do this with your help, with your national societies, with your Red Crosses, which without whom we wouldn't be able to work and respond as quickly as we do. I'm definitely happy that Vice-admiral Hausermann talked about and Brigadier Erik talked about the time-sensitive manner of responding to a disaster. Our national societies do it from the ground first, and we escalate as needed. And we are there as a federation, as a secretariat to concentrate on that disaster, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, as well as the risk management, cooperating, coordinating whenever necessary, and sometimes just even coexisting with the armed forces, police forces, government agencies, civil society, and many other, exercising our neutrality, impartiality, and independence, so that we can work everywhere. So you see, we are all over every country, utilizing our fundamental principles of humanity, impartiality, and independence, alleviating suffering and ensuring the livelihoods before, during, and after a disaster. And that's where our value added comes across, as well as what we call our auxiliary role to governments in times of disaster. We're auxiliary to every single one of the governments in times of disaster. We're an arm of you, and we support you, as well as we work with you. So I think that's important. We have had many, as many of my co-panelists have talked about, have many emergency operations of success, such as, of course, Haiti in 2010, that everybody knows, the Bahamas with Hurricane Dorian, Guatemala with the fire emergency. Not so long ago with Hurricane ETA and Iota, and of course now we can't put aside the COVID pandemic, where all our society is working together with countries to respond as quickly and as swiftly and as in a coordinated effort. Another important point is the work that we do with governments with the international disaster response law. Engaging with governments so that in times of a pandemic or a disaster or a crisis, we have the laws in place to be able to get you that humanitarian assistance and disaster relief as quickly as possible. We do this, and Ian and the team have seen it also. We even have a humanitarian hub in Panama that within 5 to 7 hours can go as far up as Canada and as far down as Chile and Argentina, and of course East and West. So that's where we are. We have tools, both monetary tools that we utilize based on donations and based on the participation of country Red Crosses within our federation, and of course based on disaster response calls or appeals. So we are there. We try to be there also within hours and coordinate with our peers, because we would be amiss in the humanitarian area. We are all there working together to save lives and eliminate suffering.
Excellent, excellent. And I think that we have an excellent segue here for Vice-Admiral Jean Hossaman when we talk about, the military agencies and even civilian agencies like yourself. Vice-Admiral, how do we prepare collectively to face natural disasters when we talk about some of these overlapping services and resources, and when we go from military and civilian, and collectively, how can we face future natural disasters?
Well, thank you very much, Christian. And I think already some of the tools are already known and already put in place. That is, first of all, as I said last year in Panama with the previous session of HADR, that is networking, that is to say, know each other through this kind of forum. So thank you very much for organizing this forum. It's one of the paths for enhancing civil and military cooperation. After the Panama session, I made a lot of contacts, and I was able to operate and create some operations with the people that I just met in Panama. So thank you very much once again. The second type of tool is going into deeper cooperation, and it's to share tabletop exercises, such as the CDMA organized Synergy 2020, which was a very good example of how to address collectively the same scenario and on the tabletop side, so it's easy. It's not too expensive, and it's a good way to do that kind of business. Of course, next step is to have field exercises. And we all know that it's very difficult with regards to COVID-19 regulations. But as an example, the French forces will organize an HADR exercise in Marie-Galante, French territories off the coast of Guadeloupe, in May from 8 to 12. And my ambition is to invite all the stakeholders that might be interested, NGOs, international organizations, as well as partner military organizations. I don't know if that will happen with regards to the pandemic, but it's my ambition to organize this kind of exercise, such as there is other exercise in the area that can also meet that point. And probably the last ditch effort is to settle common procedures and also tools to share the same awareness. And you know that, like Brigadier General Rodriguez said, the 72 first hours are very important. And it's always a challenge to have a shared awareness in a short amount of time. Sorry for my bad English. And probably we can work on that in order to have to share the assessment. The military have also some reconnaissance tools that can feed the common awareness. But what kind of tools do we have to use? Of course, there is probably a lot of CIS in this, but also exchange of liaison officers. I think there is a lot to do, but already things are working very well. And General Rodriguez took the example of the hurricane season in Guatemala and Honduras. And as we know each other, the French forces were able to plug in the US operation. And so I sent a ship with cargo of equipment and tents and food. And there was a dialogue between the US and the French military, and also on the diplomatic level, of course, with Guatemala and Honduras government, in order to assess very quickly needs and to have an idea where to deliver. So I think a lot already exists, but we can move on new points through networking, tabletop exercise, field exercise, and then sharing procedure and awareness.
Excellent, excellent, Vice-Admiral. Thank you. You know, we talk and we shift from collectively how we face natural disasters. How about the ongoing and throughout the duration of a disaster response? Brigadier General Erik Rodriguez, can you tell us how Southcom aligns and coordinates its efforts with other government agencies, even other military partners, throughout the duration of a disaster response?
Okay, Christian. First of all, I would like to mention that while Department of Defense is the leading figure during the first 72 hours facing the disaster, in fact, the lead federal agency for the US government is USAID, depending from the Department of State. So US Southcom engaged quickly initially due to we have the assets already in the region, but the leading entity is the Department of State through USAID. Then once the coordinators from the Bureau for Humanitarian Affairs from USAID get on the ground, they assume the leadership overall the US government response in the region. This implies integrating the US Southcom transportation and logistical capabilities in the region too. And Southcom continues operating under the leadership of the USA, and how Southcom avoid the duplicity and coordinate with other government agencies and military partners through the region. Well, US Southcom is really fortunate to have a senior Department of State Foreign Service officer and former ambassador as a civilian deputy commander, Mrs. Jane Maines. She provides connectivity with the US ambassadors in the region and the commander. Additionally, Southcom has two liaison officers from USAID, Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance, USAID, full-time in our staff. And they regularly train our staff and also train the components on best practices for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. These officers, these liaison officers, also deploy to the sites to serve as coordinators when the aids are arriving to the ground. Besides that, the J79 has an interagency division that integrates and coordinates efforts with other governmental agencies and also with international organizations and NGOs. And international organizations, for instance, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UN-OCHA, to maintain the awareness of the whole of government and international response efforts. We also have partner nations military advisors embedded in the Southcom staff, representing all the countries of my fellow panelists today. And this helps keep us or stay informed and aligned with the regional military response. Also, Southcom has the ability to run 24-hour operations through the Enhanced Joint Operations Center or the Crisis Action Team, enabling the commander and the components and also the interagency partners to provide guidance and adjust priorities in accordance with the latest information. All of these countries to providing more effective DoD support to the larger US government and international effort. There is another mechanism to coordinate, and is through the training. As you know, US Southcom every year lead many military exercises in the region, where some of them regards to the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operation in the region. And the main aim of this international exercise is to maintain the readiness and the capability to operate in a coordinated way jointly with all our partners.
Sure, excellent. We appreciate that. As we talk about mitigating risk, not just logistically, but even mitigating the risk of confusion, Lieutenant Colonel Westlake, can you kind of talk us through the benefits of that collaborative and coherent preparation ahead of a disaster?
Yes, Christian, thank you. And I think actually that issue reflects in the discussion we've been having already. The need for working together in advance of the crisis, the need for that collaboration, the need for the civil military cooperation, all seeks to mitigate that risk. But I'll just pick up on one or two points that Brigadier General Rodriguez has just made, because I fully recognise, I'm sat here speaking as the Defence Attaché of the Caribbean, but I'm part of a UK network.
Sure.
The liaison officers we have with Southcom, with Northcom, with JIATF South, the wider regional Defence Attaché network we have, provides us that coherence to our engagement, and indeed led to us looking at the novel ways in which we may work together. And so, for example, when we had the disaster really that struck Central America, Honduras particularly, we saw the UK ships actually acting as a lily pad for US helicopters. And so that combination of capabilities is sometimes the solution to the problem. It wasn't necessarily what we were providing as direct support into Honduras, but it's what we were providing that enabled the US to provide support into Honduras. But I think, one thing we've not spoken about here, I think, is the benefit of exercise trade winds, which is a mechanism that allows us as international partners to invest our capabilities into working with regional organizations, regional capabilities. And so, the points that Admiral Jean has made about exercises, about tabletop exercises, about working groups, all important, absolutely important. But I think trade winds offers a unique opportunity for us all to come together collaboratively to work, to pick up on the words you've used, coherent preparation, to understand each other's capabilities, how we bring them together, how we avoid duplication, to pick up a point that Brigadier General Rodriguez has just made. We need to seize every opportunity and invest in those opportunities to build understanding, to build capability and improve year on year. And I think we're seeing that in the investments that have been made into the MNCCC, into the organizations in the region, but it's how we exploit the other opportunities to plug the international effort into that regional architecture. But I think if we recognize when disaster strikes, there will be confusion, and our first response is seeking to try and eliminate that confusion, to understand context, because from a UK perspective, that understanding will drive everything we do thereafter to deploy capabilities from the UK out into the region. So we need to eliminate that confusion. And if we're able to do all of the things we have collectively been talking about so far out of crisis, that will aid us when we're trying to mitigate that confusion. So really, it's a focus on that work that we do to train together, to understand each other's capabilities. And I think there's one point I'd highlight here that I think would aid in perhaps some of the confusion that occurs, is understanding entirely how it is an international military response is generated. For example, as a DA, I have certain levels of authority, but I am not able to make a national decision about UK assets in the region providing a response. That is a national decision that will be taken. And so it's our partners understanding that ultimately there needs to be a request, because we are providing support in response to a request for assistance. And that needs to be a national request or a regional request, perhaps from SEDEMA, through the diplomatic network. So again, a UK perspective, through our diplomatic missions, that will go into our Whitehall mechanism to decide on the appropriate UK response. That may be military, but it may not be military. We have just conducted our estimate and taken a decision to forward deploy assets because we know they could be, the most valuable to be delivered quickly. But we have a mechanism that we have to apply under UK national law to enable that response to be delivered. And so, working together in advance allows us to understand not just what we have, but how that is generated.
Proactively, is there anything that, in your opinion, that you see maybe bureaucratic or even considered red tape when some of these decisions or requests are brought to you and they're looking for quick decisions, they're looking for quick responses? Obviously, you've got the resources, you've got the assets in the region already. Proactively, you have teams that have been training for it. But like you said, some of these are national decisions and may not be able to be decided in an instant. Is there anything proactive that could be done in a summit and kind of a format we have here to expedite those requests, or are you finding that those requests are actually pretty expeditious as they stand now?
Well, I think one of the complications I saw through the last season was, for example, requests coming from parts of partners' governments that we did not expect the request to come from. And so understanding how that national architecture is going to plug into the UK diplomatic network, that may be work we need to do to better understand, but importantly, it's understanding where that interface is. I mean, one area that I would highlight though is the investment we are making in developing effectively status of forces agreements or MOUs with regional partners to enable the rapid deployment of UK military capability, so that we get ahead of some of the problems that arise when you have an urgent requirement, but we do not have a standing agreement to allow a rapid military deployment into another country's territory. If we're able to establish that agreement beforehand, to establish the protocols that would apply, that aids all of us, I think, in making decisions and getting a response moving. Otherwise, we are in a position of negotiating all of the basis of that deployment. Being able to work through those protocols in advance, and they may be COVID protocols, that's difficult, I know, but there can be the standard protocols we can agree ahead of game that allows us to better deliver a rapid response. We, as the UK, do not yet have all of those agreements in place that we would like, but we would continue to work with our partners to develop those agreements that would better enable us to deliver a rapid response.
Absolutely. Proactively having the discussion up front, who from which nations or which organizations, whether it's civilian or even military allies, who is going to be calling with the request, and understanding how to connect those dots before an event or a disaster ever happens, to where those phones aren't ringing yet, really, I'm sure expedites the process. And you already expect who's calling, and you don't have any surprise requests. And I think probably those are some of the things you're referring to that maybe slow down even some of the regular expected requests, right? The unexpected. My next question is for Lieutenant Colonel Paul Simpson. We're talking a lot about exercises in the region. Regarding the exercises and the preparedness in between disasters in the region, give us your thoughts on the integration of international support and the integration of pre-hurricane season activities in that region.
Yeah, so like I said, there's a lot of activities that do take place going into a given hurricane season. The challenge in a lot of respects is to try and synchronize those so that they kind of make sense from a national, regional, international response perspective. It's colored in part by the fact that, say, the UK needs to do certain things in response to its overseas territories, the French and the Dutch in a similar fashion. So those are things that may not be able to be synchronized, but their presence, the assets in the region, maybe, if we can be smart about leveraging their presence, they do what they need to do for their national requirements, but then we synchronize that into whatever SEDIMA is doing with regards to getting the regional response mechanism going and bringing in those other players, whether it's OCHA, whether it's, in our case, Global Affairs Canada, or State Department folks, OFTA, to get those folks at the table, even if it's in this COVID environment, a virtual thing, which we had to do last year with the MNCCC, and just building upon those creating a building block type of approach that sees us walk methodically through hurricane season preparations that addresses both national requirements, regional requirements, and then the whole international piece. We started to talk with SEDEMA about getting that more of an approach down, and I think there's some merit to that because, like I said earlier, a lot of folks you're dealing with here trying to draw on them to come to all of these different exercises really kind of overwhelms them to the point that we're not getting as much value out of it as we may have if we synchronized it better.
Okay. Understood. Did we have a question from Rear Admiral? I apologize.
Oh yes, just a small thought. We are talking about exercising between disaster, which is I guess a good point. That is to say, as we always think about hurricane season, preparing the hurricane season, and so on. And I remember in 2019 there was an exercise during the hurricane season. And taking advantage of this exercise, we were able to respond to Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas in a much swifter way because we were already ready, as the troops were already on the ships. We just have to delay exercise and add operation, and then the ships sails directly toward Bahamas. So it's just a small thing that, of course, we have to prepare the hurricane season, but as have been said previously, we have to get ready anytime and maybe exercise during the hurricane season, if it sounds a possibility for a quicker reaction. It's only a small remark. Thank you very much for all the remarks. Very
excellent point, Vice-Admiral Hossaman. We appreciate that. And Lieutenant Colonel Simpson, I apologize. I didn't mean to cut you off. I appreciate your response as well. Pardon me. As we move on to Mr. Zequeira, what were some of the things y'all done in recent years utilizing civil-military relations in humanitarian response? Can you kind of educate us on that?
Thanks very much. No, and I want to also reinstate something that Vice-Admiral Hausermann and Colonel Simpson said in 2018 with the Guatemalan fire volcano hit. We had just had a humanitarian exercise from U.S. Army South. Bahum, Humanitarian Allied Forces, and we were exercising that, and we had just finished, and that gave us that much leverage in which to be able to work with. So that leads me into your question, which is participating in these exercises, getting to know each other, getting to know all the actors, talking to each other, ensuring that we form groups that before hurricane season can have a pre-hurricane meeting and actually ensure that our assets are in place, our personnel are in place, that we have dusted off all those plans before it comes. Especially for hydrometeorological events such as hurricanes, but that we're ready for all types of disaster and crisis. I think somebody also mentioned the trade winds exercises. Those are key for the region and for the Caribbean, and they have changed in the years so that we can support each other and we can support what all those 13 island nations in the Caribbean need the most, which is that humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. With the support of SEDEMA, with the support of the regional security services, sometimes also, and with the support of all the nations that are here represented that are in the region. We support national society sometimes in the request that, for example, the United States Southern Command does to us when they deploy the USNS Comfort, or there is a medical exercise, a medic in a place, because it also exercises our personnel, and it also brings our personnel together with those personnel, and in order to better not only relations but professional work together. We also reinstated the importance of what we call the International Disaster Response Law, which prepares actual countries and to be able to bring in humanitarian assistance and disaster relief without the burdens of stops at the border or stops by migration or other government agencies, because they're ready and because they have laws in order to help them come in. And those exercises are important in that. And of course, training with the agencies, with the war colleges, with the militaries and the academy, so that they know a humanitarian and they know what a humanitarian does when they encounter them in what we call the humanitarian space, which is all of our space right now, and that vice versa. We bring military personnel to train our humanitarian personnel on what the military does, what the commander's intent means, and ensure that the saving of lives goes both ways. So exchanging experiences through civil-military relations is the key, before, during, and after. And I think I've said that. Over.
The passion and willingness that you all have with your teams to be a support mechanism and structure for the region. I love the proactive nature. I feel your pain, and I feel the connection where we've got to have more communication between the military organizations and the civilian ones as well. Understanding communication flow, resource flow, all ahead and before an event to minimize the confusion and and to mitigate that risk of confusion, as we were discussing earlier. As we wrap up, I'd like to kind of circle around the panel and get everyone's closing final thoughts or remarks, and we'll bring the panel to a close. We'll start with Vice-Admiral Hausermann.
Well, thank you very much. I think that with my bad English, I already tortured you a lot, so I will not go too deep. But once again, thank you very much for organizing this kind of forum. I found that last year edition was very fruitful, and I think we are currently doing what we think it's important, is to say networking and knowing each other through exercises, through forum, and through tabletop exercise as well. What I wanted to say also, it's about the coordination cells that we might raise up, and I think that we have to be very without too much structure. You know that in 2017, for Hurricane Irma and Maria and Jose, there was a MN-CCC raised in Curaçao, along with the Dutch and the UK. During 2020, with regards to the COVID-19, there was also a military coordination cell raised here in Martinique in my staff, along with the Dutch, the British Armed Forces, US Southcom, and Canadian people. So probably the lesson learned is that we have to adapt the structure. Of course, already existing structures are important, but we will have to adapt the C2 structure on every scenario, because we know perfectly well from the experience that each scenario is different. It's a different place, it's different countries, it's different in the people that are impacted. So we'll have to adapt, and we'll adapt quicker if we have exercise and met each other far in advance, as everyone said. Once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to express myself.
I did it again, Jim, and I apologize. Vice-Admiral Hausermann, thank you again for joining us and your time, and we appreciate your proactive approach. Next, Brigadier General Rodriguez, your closing thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Before close or say the ending words, I want to agree with my fellow partners. I didn't mention it before. For humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, always is the readiness. And the readiness only can be maintained through training. That's why Southcom develop every year international exercise with the participation of the partner nations from the region, even the allied countries. An example of this is Trade Winds that this year is going to run in June and is going to be led by Southcom and host by Guyana. And these international exercises are a very important tool to keep that coordination, integration of efforts, and maintain the readiness to guarantee a quick response during that 72 hours and coordinate after the 72 hours the overall response from not only the US government, also from the partner nations. Thank you very much by the invitation to this panel, and I will be able for any question or concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your participation and your time, Brigadier General Rodriguez. We appreciate the insight and your leadership there at Southcom. Next, Lieutenant Colonel Westlake, any final thoughts or comments?
Yes, Christian, thank you. I think I would just say that, as a military professional, I recognize no plan survives first contact with the enemy. In this context, it's the environment that is the enemy. And having just seen, I think, the fifth successive above average hurricane season, we can be certain that there will be a hurricane, multiple hurricanes each season going forward. What can be less certain of is what those will lead to. We can only hope they don't lead to disaster, but of course we can't base our planning and our preparations on a hope. We have to be sure that we've invested as much as we can into our readiness, into our understanding, into our capacity to deliver what ultimately is about saving lives. And so I think, if I look at this discussion today, the forum within which this discussion is taking place is a sign of the appetite for this collaboration, the appetite to invest in our capabilities. And I think that should be a very welcoming and encouraging sign. I, as a UK representative, am here ready, able to talk and work with any partner because it's important to all of us. We have a responsibility to our overseas territories, of course, but we have a responsibility to the partnerships that we have with everybody in this region. And I look forward to continuing these discussions outside of this forum. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you again for your time, Lieutenant Colonel. We appreciate your insight. And I know there's going to be quite a few follow-up discussions had, and hopefully leading to connecting these dots and ensuring that the communication, that handoff between military resources and civilian is more seamless and with less confusion, right? Let's move on to Lieutenant Colonel Simpson. your final thoughts or comments, sir.
Oh, I just echo what my esteemed colleagues have said. This has been a really great opportunity to exchange ideas and to just look at how far we have come really in the region and looking at these problem sets and identifying other places we need to go to get better. Like Simon said, it's all about saving lives, being responsive, and it'll be an exponential effect as we work closer and closer together in responding to what is inevitably going to be more hurricanes and more disasters. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time and participating. And you're absolutely right. It's impressive to see what your teams have done just in the past few years with the disasters you've experienced, not just through this pandemic as well. And it's impressive using the example of allowing your naval carriers to maybe be lily pads for U.S. helicopters as an example. I think it's incredible. I think more people need to hear some of these stories and these resources and that they're out there. They need to know about the trainings that you guys are doing in the region in between disasters. I think it'd be more greatly appreciated, but also utilized when those needs do arise after a disaster. Let's go to Mr. Zequeira. Do you have any closing remarks or comments to end the discussion?
Yeah, and thank you and the panel. Again, this has been a very, very rich discussion. Again, just like Lieutenant Colonel Westlake said, it just shows the appetite, but it also shows the need that we have at all levels, you know, technical, operational, and strategic levels to coordinate and to ensure that we have everything in place before a disaster hits, a disaster or crisis, and that we can follow on and follow through. I think what the world is doing right now with COVID and with military just shows. I mean, I'll be amiss if I don't say that in this humanitarian space where we need to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, without our militaries, without our governments, without our security services, as well as humanitarians, we would not get very, very far. And this just shows that we need to continue to do so, and we need to strengthen all those areas in order to do it. Over.
I completely agree. You know, bridging these gaps and continuing the communication and having the dialogue with the people that are, it's not if, it becomes a function of when there is a disaster in the region, knowing who those people are that's going to be picking up the phone and making those phone calls, having the discussions before they make that first phone call, just to be prepared and kind of talk through the process, I think is going to help fill a lot of these gaps. Again, thank you, gentlemen, for your time and all of your insight and guidance. And I look forward to seeing what else happens with this conference and the further discussions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.